December 31st, Oventic, Chiapas. This morning was one of the more moving experiences of my life. At about 5:30 a.m., several thousand people gathered on the road in front of Oventic. Their mission was to walk to the nearest army base and tell them simply to leave, now. Many from DF and international observers were invited to participate. After the first mile or so, we were greeted by another group marching from the south. We then took a side road that wove through the mountains to the army base, and people carried signs that read, "Military leave, fulfill the Accords of San Andres, release political prisoners, leave already, and demilitarize Chiapas." The morning was cloud covered, but you could tell when the sun was rising as it gradually became even more light. One thing that was impressive was the level of order and discipline that the participants showed. We finally arrived at the military base in Jocopilas. The crowd immediately began to chant at the gate, and a few soldiers walked down carrying their rifles, and the few in the guard held their posts by the gate. Then the group decided to move past the first set of barbed wire by crawling under it, while some of them entered. Others threw paper airplanes at the soldiers who stood there. This is what they jokingly called the Zapatista Air Force. People were now pressed up against the last gate, while others had panned out on both sides of the entrance, pressing up against the guard's post structure. The chanting continued with statements such as "Chiapas is not a barracks," and then catching the military and many of us off guard, the people actually forced their way onto the base. Trudging through the mud, the hundreds of supporters had backed the soldiers up against the barracks, now chanting "Oi, oi, oi," and "Zapata vive." The look of many of the young soldiers' faces was one of disbelief as villagers began telling them the pain that their presence has caused their families every day. After about 30 minutes had passed, some of what appeared to be military officers came out to speak to the crowd, and people kept demanding their immediate departure. And I overheard one of the officers tell a pleading man that they indeed were leaving today. The exchange between some of the villagers and the officers went on for some time, when all of a sudden one of the communication antennas began to fall. I was able to turn quick enough to capture it on film. The crowd cheered wildly as it hit the muddy terrain below. And later we found out that someone had cut the lines to prevent the soldiers from communicating for outside assistance. At one point, one of the villagers got the crowd to quiet down as the declaration was read out loud expressing their demands. When the reading was finished, as if on cue, the people began to sing the Zapatista anthem. But this time, more than 2 hours had passed, and people eventually began filing back to the base and back to Oventic. And as we walked back, the clouds had begun to part, and the sun warmed us as if a divine affirmation of the morning's activities was bestowed upon us.
Comunicado del Comité Clandestino Revolucionario Indígena, Comandancia General del Ejército Zapatista de Liberación Nacional, México. 1 de enero del año 2001, 7º aniversario del alzamiento zapatista. Por mi voz, habla la voz del Ejército Zapatista de Liberación Nacional. Hermanos y hermanas indígenas mexicanos, hermanos y hermanas de México y el mundo. En el año 7 de la guerra contra el olvido, repetimos lo que somos. Somos viento nosotros, no el pecho que nos sopla. Somos palabra nosotros, no los labios que nos hablan. Somos paso nosotros, no el pie que nos anda. Somos latido nosotros, no el corazón que lo pulsa. Somos puente nosotros, no el suelo que nos une. Somos caminos nosotros, no el punto de llegada ni de partida. Somos lugar nosotros, no quien lo ocupa. No existimos nosotros, solo somos. 7 veces somos, nosotros 7 veces. Nosotros, el espejo repetido, el reflejo, nosotros. La mano que apenas abre la ventana, nosotros. Nosotros, el tímido llamado a la puerta del mañana. Hermanos y hermanas, 7 han sido los reflejos que el antiguo espejo ha sacado del segundo 1000 y el 20.100 que terminan.